Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell Podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. Pleased to be joined by Tim Rogers, the head football coach at Forest Hills Central. Tim, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Good to be here.
All right, so let's talk about how these first few days of camp are going, and really, obviously, everybody knows what you guys did last year. And what was it? Well, first off, what was it just like to lead this group of assistant coaches and a bunch of kids to Ford Field for the very first time?
Funny you asked that because just yesterday we were talking about it. And I think somebody asked me, we scrimmaged last year against Caledonia. And I mean, they absolutely obliterated us in the scrimmage. And somebody asked me shortly after, like, what do you think of this year's team? And I said, I think it'll be a fine team, about 6-3. And the next thing I know, we're 13-0. So that tells you how much football coaches actually know about their team sometimes. But what we found out in retrospect is it was a very unselfish team and all the parts fit. I mean, we've had more successful teams in the past, but this past year had all the intangibles. And, lo and behold, after getting slobber knocked by Caledonia in the scrimmage game, and it turns out they were awfully good. We just kind of came together and people were unselfish and just kind of we had no ego on that team, and we just worked really hard, and we're blessed with two good quarterbacks and a good interior line on both sides of the ball. And as it turns out, last year we had two Division I football players, as Hudkins and Richardson have both verbally committed to D1 schools. So it turned out a lot better than I expected. I knew we were going to be pretty good, but I never envisioned being that good.
Yeah. Okay. So how have the first few days of practice have gone for you so far? We're now 4 days into this thing. Last day in shells before we get the full pads tomorrow. So what has this week of practice been like for you guys?
So last year we were, although we had a great senior group, the primary part of the roster was juniors. So this year it just kind of feels really smooth. I mean, the expectation level is high, the accountability level is high. We've been together as a staff 12 years. This group of kids, I'm telling you, we have 3 coaches' kids that are seniors this year. So I've kind of known them intimately, the senior group, since 7th, 8th grade, because all my coaches on my staff, kind of watching those kids on our sideline and going to watch their youth league games. It's been exciting to watch them grow and become the men that they are. And at the same time, I've had the luxury of a group of kids who are very talented, accountable, and been around so long that it's like, this is what we do. This is what we do. There's no confusion. We haven't, you look closely at our program, we haven't made a ton of changes. We have an identity on offense, defense, and special teams. And our coaching staff's been together the better part of 10 years. So the best way I could describe these past couple of days is it's just been really smooth. Like we kind of all know one another well enough and been doing this for long enough time that we're eager to get to the next day and get into the regular season.
Okay, so now it's time to talk about all the returners and all the guys to watch out for the Rangers this year. Let's start with the skill positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and then we'll work our way down.
Okay, so quarterback, we have Mason McDonald, who last year, through the brilliance of my offensive coordinator, got a lot of playing time. We had 2 really good players. Our senior was last year Justin Osterhaus, and unbeknownst to me, because I give that kind of authority to my offensive coordinator, every third series Mason McDonald was getting on the field, and I thought that was a great idea. Mason was good enough to go out and play receiver as well, but rain or shine, regardless of where we were in the game, every third series throughout the game, Mason McDonald came in to play, and it turned out to be fantastic because he got valuable experience, and we wound up having to play with just Mason during the playoffs because Osterhaus rolled his ankle. So I look at him as a returning starter. So we have a returning starter at quarterback. We have a 3-year starter at the tailback in JT Hartman. Really good football player. I mean, he's He's not really big. He's not really fast. He is really strong, but he just does it all. I mean, he's a very physical runner, and he's a great blocker, and he's got great hands, and he's a great high school football player. Out to receiver position, Ty Hudkins was recruited by many Division I schools this past year, and verbally committed to Northwestern. So he's a really talented kid. Plays, a few of these guys play both sides of the ball, but I mean, he could track the ball on the vertical throw, and at the same time, he's got a lot of shake to him on intermediate to short routes, and he's a home run threat every single time we get the ball to him. So those would be the three guys. I mean, I'm not sure what you consider Max as a tight end, but Max Richardson is a junior who he too will wind up being a 3-year starter. He started last year for us. He committed to Stanford over the summer, and he's a big, strong guy. 6'3", 220 pounds, who runs really, really well, and he's a good blocker. Probably his primary position is on defense, but he's a really good football player as well. So there's a few guys on offense there that that'll make your head spin if you're a defense coordinator.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to offensive line and defensive line. Where are we at there?
Offensive line would be we had a big group last year, probably more depth than we have this year. 3 of the starters, again, we rotate so many kids. Jay Coe was our starter at center last year. He's back. Joey Wing was arguably our best offensive lineman. He is back. And then Quinlan Sutherland, Lucas Fours, who played a bunch in terms of rotation, they're back as well. So, we need 1 or 2 guys to fill some holes in the starting lineup, and we definitely need to bring some people along for depth. But we feel like we return quite a bit up front on the offensive line. So you flip over to the defensive line, some of the same names. Lucas Fours is our returning outside, our defensive end. Quinlan Sutherland is our starting nose guard. We got an up-and-coming star in Orion Roskamp, who his brother played for us last year, and he's a kid that'll play on both sides of the ball for us. So there's some depth up front in the defensive line, and probably need to develop more on the offensive line.
Okay. To linebackers and secondary we go.
Linebackers, another familiar name would be JT Hartman. Again, 3-year starter on both sides of the ball. Next to him is Nolan Hartle, who again played a ton of football last year.
Yep.
Was in a regular rotation at linebacker, and he also rotates with JT in the backfield. Very good football player, also an excellent lacrosse player.
Yep.
And Micah Meadows coming up as a junior, and Matt Sexton, who's also going to be a real good football player. He's only a sophomore. He potentially is a Division I football player here sometime soon. So the linebacking core is pretty good. Our outside linebackers, we play an odd front, so our outside linebackers, Max would be one of them. The other side would be kid that started last year, Drew Fortino, so a returning starter there. And then bumping back to the secondary, the leader back there is definitely Ty Hudkins. He's a 3-year starter. Next to him is Braden Druke, really good football player. Got hurt last year, cut his season a little short, but still played considerable reps for us. And then the corners will be the 2. That'll be more of a challenge there, where we had we had 2 seniors last year, so these guys didn't get a ton of experience, but they were on the field. One of them is Roman Brummel. The other one over there could be a number of different people. Jacob Harleton is a senior. Both of those guys are a senior, but neither one of them got a ton of playing time. So we're working on getting them the experience they need to go into a season.
Absolutely. Let's go to special teams.
Well, you take every one of those guys and put them on special teams. That's how simple that is. We had an all-state kicker last year, and Andrew Nove, and it's like a former soccer player gong show right now. That we're bringing out some of our better soccer players, and they come out, and one or 2 of them will kick for us. We'll see how that all turns out. And a backup role would be a guy like Jay Coe, our center. And then after that, I mean, we'll have good returners, obviously. A Ty Hudkins kid who's going to be great in the secondary, and as a receiver, he'll return punts and kicks. Brennan Cargill will do a nice job. He's one of the JV stars last year as a skill guy, and he'll help on the receiving core as well as in punt and kick return. So yeah, some of those names, I could say them all over again in special teams, but we hope at that point that the juniors who are kind of waiting their turn, that we start getting them involved in kickoff, kick return, all that kind of stuff.
All right. Okay, so we've talked about all the kids. Let's talk about the schedule. And obviously we know the OK White doesn't get any tougher than that. It starts of course starting off on the 25th at Jenison. I'll just read through the schedule really quick. August 31st home against Portage Central, September 8th at Grand Rapids Christian, September 15th at Forest Hills Northern, September 22nd home against Byron Center, September 29th at East Grand Rapids, October 6th home against Grand Rapids Northview, October 13th at Lowell, and October 20th home against Greenville to finish out the regular season. So pretty good schedule there. Going into that, just your thoughts on what the OK White might look like this year.
Well, we've always had a battle with Byron Center. It's always, I tell our kids we're going to have to beat Byron Center to win the league. 3 years ago, we tied for the league title with Byron Center and won the last two outright. But it's always been a battle. That's always been a really tough game for us. Last year, Lowell, we only beat them 14-7. Not a new head coach anymore, but now a coach that's been there for a little bit and getting comfortable with his kids and his schemes and all that kind of stuff. And Lowell football has always had a great tradition. So Lowell, that's another team that's going to be really good. And then, it never fails. Ryan Osnack's a good coach over at Northview. What's going to happen there? Or Eddie Astapo at Forest Hills Northern. I mean, there's always the guy at Grand Rapids Christian's done a great job, but he's only been there a couple of years and he's trying to get it figured out. So the one thing that I keep telling our team is, it's a lot easier to get to the top than it is to stay on the top. And, I'll ask them just recently, last couple of days, hey, remember this game that we went out and played that perfect game? And they'll all be like, yeah, coach, that was a great game. I said, we'll expect that every time we play this year because now we're the hunted and there is no time to relax. And we're not going to, be able to just get by, just mailing it in because this is a game that's going to be scheduled for circled on a lot of people's schedule. And I tell them, I said, someone beats us this upcoming year, there's going to be a parade down their city or down in their town. Because they beat we call ourselves the Division II public school champs. And there'll be a lot of excitement. So I imagine we'll play in front of big crowds and we'll get everybody's best effort. And we're preparing for a competitive, well-coached team week in and week out because that's what you get when you played in Ford Field the previous year.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I know that what are these next 2 weeks of practice, what do you feel like you guys need to do to get ready for Jenison in a few weeks?
We need to develop depth. We need, I told you we have a lot of experience coming back, but there's just not enough depth on high school teams nowadays. I mean, unless you're talking to Rockford's head coach, most of us are struggling to have a good, solid 2 deep across the board. I say that because Cummings and I are good friends. We're just struggling to find who these role players are now so that, the goal of our program is if you have 3 or 2 guards in your offensive lineup, you have to have 3 that you trust so you can rotate them. So you have 2 tackles, you need to have 3 of them that you can trust. So what we're looking for in the next couple of weeks is who's the 3rd player so that we can have a rotation and keep people fresh and be prepared for any type of injury so that the wheels keep churning. So we're looking really hard at, we brought a sophomore up and Matt Sexton, and we got a bunch of juniors that they won their league title last year. That'll be role players for now, but that's how all these seniors started at one point too. So we're trying to find who those guys are so that we can, make it through 4 quarters of a game and compete at a high level and still have the energy to do so. You can't do that if you're playing on every down on both sides of the ball.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us, and best of luck to you guys this season.
Thank you very much for having me.